My husband and I have been married for 3 years now. I have a daughter, 15 years old, and he has a son, 24 years old. I am friendly with my stepson, but we aren't close. He has a biological mother who is a perfectly fine woman. I'm not here to take the role of his mom. My late husband, my daughter's father, died when my daughter was 6. We both contributed to her college fund. My daughter's paternal grandparents have also contributed a large amount. Right now, the fund has about $180,000. My daughter is extremely bright, and I'm not just saying that because I'm her mom. I truly believe she has the capacity to go to an Ivy League school, and her teachers have said she has the potential as well. And I don't want costs to hold her back. Our income would be too high to get any meaningful financial aid. And while there are a few merit-based scholarships out there that she will be applying to, we don't want to put all our eggs in one basket and hope she gets it when it's so competitive. My current husband and I have separate finances. He doesn't contribute at all to my daughter's fund. My stepson is struggling with a heroin addiction and has stolen money, jewelry, higher loans, and electronics from us for drug money. I understand that addiction is a disease, and I personally paid for an outpatient detox for him, which cost $1,000, which failed. His father then paid for an outpatient rehab program, which cost $6,500, which also didn't work because he barely showed up. He promised us he'd do better next time and he needed another chance. So I split the cost of another $6,500 outpatient rehab program with my husband, which seemed to work during program, but he relapsed as soon as he got out of it. I have spent so much money, time, and energy and it hasn't helped at all. My husband and my stepson want to try a 60-day inpatient rehab program, which will cost $30,000. I had absolutely no idea where they were supposed to get the money for that, considering the thousands and thousands of dollars that were already spent, and the fact that we no longer had anything of value in our house. They want to use my daughter's college fund, which to me is absolutely off limits. I feel like it's completely unfair to my daughter to punish her for my stepson's addiction. Unfair to my late husband and his parents, but frankly, I don't think spending $30,000 will work. My husband thinks I'm an asshole because I'm prioritizing my daughter's education over his son's life. And he believes medical needs come first. He then asked my daughter if she'd be willing to use $30,000 from her fund to pay for her stepbrother's rehab. And she got very quiet and did not answer. He then got very upset with her and said she was being selfish. My daughter later told me that she didn't want to give her stepbrother the money, but she felt so guilty. And I am furious at my husband for emotionally guilt-tripping my daughter like that. For the past 5 years, I volunteered for a mental health hotline. I'm deeply passionate about the hotline's work, and I've devoted huge amounts of time and energy to answering calls, training new volunteers, and fundraising. I've become close friends with many of the people I volunteer with, and I get a lot of joy out of helping people who don't have a lot of other support in their lives. I love this organization. I can't imagine my life without it. Today, the head of the organization sent out an email announcing that they've hired a new volunteer coordinator, the girl who relentlessly bullied me in high school and made my life a living hell. I was completely blindsided. I moved across the continent after graduating from high school, and I have no idea how or when this girl moved to my city. I doubt she applied for this job to deliberately antagonize me, since we've had no contact since graduation and all volunteers are anonymous. So it's just a terrible coincidence. But it still means I'm going to have to be working with a person who was unbelievably cruel to me. I really don't know what to do. Obviously, all of this was a long time ago, and it's possible she's cleaned up her act since high school. But I still hate the idea of even being in the same room as this girl. I've had her blocked on every platform for, wow, over a decade now. It looks like my only options are to A, tough it out and deal with this person coming back into my life, or B, quit the hotline after 5 years of service. I went for my regularly scheduled afternoon shift at the hotline, and the girl just happened to be there for some kind of orientation. I wasn't expecting her to be there, so I initially just kept my head down and ignored her. A little while into the shift, she came over to introduce herself, and genuinely didn't seem to recognize me. I've cut my hair and gotten glasses since high school, so that could have been it. It was a very brief interaction, and I didn't say anything to her in return, just nodded and smiled. After she left, I asked my shift supervisor if I could speak with her privately. I followed some of the advice here, just letting her know that I have a history with this person and I'm not comfortable working with her directly. The shift supervisor was very understanding and said that she could arrange for me to only serve shifts when the girl isn't supervising. She also offered to let me schedule my shifts through her instead of through the girl, which I appreciated. Unfortunately, it seems like there will be an unavoidable level of casual interaction, given that the girl is working in the facility on a full-time, 9-to-5 basis. I think I'll be able to stick it out for now, but we'll see. The shift supervisor did ask me what I wanted to tell the girl. Vis an excuse for my not wanting to be on shift with her, but I couldn't think of anything to say. So I left it up to her. I met her 2 years ago when we worked together and quickly became very close. She helped me through the darkest times of my life. I was mid-split with an abusive ex when we met, and I helped her through some really tough and unimaginable things. There were lots of rumors at the time we were seeing each other and everyone assumed we were an item. But for the past 2 years our relationship has been purely platonic. She was my best friend, and up until a few weeks back I don't think we'd even ever hugged. Fast forward to a week ago, she came over for dinner and wine. This is very common and normal. We had more than usual and she was over the limit so couldn't drive, so she stayed the night. We slept in the same bed but apart and no physical contact again. It was completely normal and just as expected. We somehow didn't get up and ended up staying in bed until 10 p.m. the next day just talking. Sometime during that evening she got upset about something going on in her life. I rubbed her back while telling her everything will be okay, and then we just cuddled. Probably the first bit of real physical contact between us, but nothing was sexual. Didn't feel weird and she went home and it was all okay. This last weekend we had a hiking holiday planned, where we'd be sleeping in her van. She has a converted Transit. It's one bed but we thought we'd be fine. First night it was freezing, ending up cuddling and spooning but again didn't feel sexual. Second night is where it all went a bit wrong. We drank a bit too much and the spoon ended up getting carried away. It seems to be a joint thing and before I knew it we were kissing and touching each other everywhere. It was a bit of a frenzy of this for about 15 minutes until we both stopped and realized what we just did. After this we spoke a little and asked if either of us regretted it. We both said we didn't, but it was odd. She got upset and I told her it was okay. It didn't change anything and we could just draw a line under it. We woke up the next morning and it happened again. We didn't talk too much but then went for a walk, and then just before we headed home we ended up all over each other again. We were completely naked but again stopped, cuddled and lay there. We both agreed it was a what happens in X, stays in X type event. It was a really long trip home, 6 hours plus. During this she would rest her head on my hand on lap ECT and it seemed very different to our usual dynamic. When we stopped at services for breaks we seemed to walk arm in arm. We kept kissing on and off but it seemed strangely normal. We arrived back at her home. She lives with her dad at the moment, but just before I left she kissed me again and thanked me for a wonderful weekend. The following day she came over to get some stuff I took home with me. We end up just cuddling, kissing, feeling and so on again, but she has dinner with a friend and we stop it there. She goes on her way. This should feel really weird and strange, but it felt completely normal and we both discussed it that it was so odd it felt normal. Yesterday she turned up unannounced at my place, which is not a normal thing, with coffee and donuts. We end up talking, cuddling, kissing again, and then we end up talking about what this is, the big problem. Neither of us were sure. She got panicky and burst out in tears and left. She said she was really scared and her words were, "I think I will end up pushing you away and hurting you and I don't want to do that to you." I told her I would come and see her later and talk. I drove to her house but her ex was there, another slight issue. They broke up 6 years ago, stayed close friends. He is a lovely bloke but in his head he is certain they will get married and have children. She's had the conversation with him but he seems to shut it off. If he found out she was seeing anyone he would get extremely angry. But there's so much family history intertwined between the both it's really complicated. For that reason she has avoided seeing anyone in the past 6 years. The reason he turned up is she hadn't responded to him since the night we kissed. I went home when I saw his car and just said she could come to mine to chat later. She turned up, sad and very emotional. She explained she ran off because she is terrified of losing our friendship. I said let's just cut the romance out. Draw a line under it and be friends again, but she seemed to not speak much when I said this. I asked if her ex was the issue. She said it was nothing to do with us but a whole other issue. But that was not impacting what was going on between us. We sat quietly, hugged, and I tried to reassure it would be okay, and I wasn't going to start hating her for whatever reason. And I am completely fine with just being platonic friends again. We both agree and say whatever happens we stay friends and nobody gets hurt, but we will pull back from the more physical side. I woke up this morning really panicky. I have no idea where we are, where we stand, and absolutely terrified of losing our friendship. I don't know what to do or say. I felt sick to my stomach and can't eat at the thought of this. She is coming around later to collect some of her clothes she left last night, and I am thinking I need a plan of what to say / do. I cannot lose my best friend. She is absolutely everything to me, but I am worried we crossed a line and there's only one eventual outcome which won't be good. I am a 16-year-old female. I used to have a good relationship with my mother. That has since crashed and burned since she dated and married my stepdad, Gary, 6 years ago. Gary treats his son Ian, 19 male, like he's the center of the universe and expects my mother to as well, so she does. Anything Ian wants, Ian gets, and that usually comes at the expense of me. Ian wanted my room when they moved it. I was forced to go to another room to make the transition easier for everyone. Ian wanted a car for his 16th birthday. I didn't get braces for another year. Ian wanted to go on an expensive trip for spring break. I had to give up volleyball to make it happen. Ian wanted to have his side of the family over. I was expected to find somewhere else to be, since I wasn't family. My mother just went along with all of this and acted like it shouldn't affect me at all. My dad was overseas for a long time, and we used to FaceTime, and he was so upset by what he was hearing. He's home now and he's offering to have me come live with him. I'm not seeing a reason not to go, and so I told my mom I wanted to go live with my dad. She predictably freaked out and asked why I'd want to do that and said that we had such a good relationship. She didn't understand how this came so out of the blue. I told her that we haven't had a good relationship since she blindly decided to follow Gary's lead and give Ian anything he wanted, and it always came at my expense. My mom tried to argue, so I said I also wanted to leave because she let them kick me out of my own house because I wasn't family. So I was going to go live with someone who was. My mom started crying and said she wouldn't let me go. So I told her that my dad was willing to go to court over it and I was old enough to be able to say where I wanted to be. She's been a crying mess since I told her, and Gary is being a jackass about how awful I'm being. He was. ING at me about how terribly I'm treating them and how I'm not thinking about them at all. I asked why should I. He never thought of me when he was taking things from me to give to his kid. I said let's face facts here, you don't care about me, what you care about is losing the child support you spend on your son. He sort of went slack-jawed and I walked off. My dad said my mom called and threatened to take him to court, so he said he'd see her there. Now she's panicking because she realized he is planning on taking her to court over this. Mom and Gary of course think I'm the asshole for making things hard for everyone. But my dad and grandparents say to leave and never look back.